Here we go. If I make a mistake, ignore it. From the day we arrive on the planet and blink and step into the sun, there's more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done.
Dumelang, tapatitse. One more time. Dumelang, tapatitse. Get 2, 3, pause.
When Hans Zimmer came in, and he brought in Le Bohème, who gave us the opening call. That
it immediately took you to Africa. I mean, at that point, it wasn't a bunch of Hollywood people trying to do what we thought Africa should be. It was somebody from that place who was able to express his feelings about that place.
We wanted the freedom of this, of expression, and just the mass of these, these amazing singers.
They just did an amazing thing with Elton's song, and working in the rhythmic chanting underneath, just grounded the whole thing in Africa and gave it a spirit.
They didn't just hire me to just write the melodies and then thank you very much, goodbye. It was, I felt as if I was part of it, and that made me feel good about it.
And Circle of Life had to be, both lyrically and musically, a strong, powerful song that would also set some of the agenda for the film.
It's about succession, about living, about dying, and the whole circle carrying on.
Disney opened the film with it and play it for 4 or 5 minutes before you even get the title.
We completely threw out a dialogue scene at the opening of the movie. Just completely threw it out and said, gee, let's just go with the music.
We were afraid that there was no way to recover from that unbelievable opening. There was just no recovery. And after we saw that, a lot of things happened in the movie to bring it up to the opening, which meant the whole movie was up to the opening, which meant it was fantastic.
Oh, I just can't wait to be king.
Circle of Life, Can't Wait to Be King, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? I can say those titles and you remember the melodies. I don't have to sing them for you. You remember the melodies of Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And that kind of strong tent pole of melody held up the rest of it.
I used to take tours around the studio a long time ago when I was just a little kid, and I always used to say that these films really started with music as much as they started with the idea of a story.
It means no worries for the rest of your day.
You know when something has momentum and everything within the crew members and everyone on the film, you just knew that this was going to be a winner because of the spirit involved in making this movie.
Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata.
One of the things that people don't know about The Lion King was that it was not actually anticipated to be a musical. It was in a sense like a National Geographic special that would be animated. Tim Rice had come to work at the studio because he had sold his play, and I sat down with him, I believe over lunch one day, and said, could this thing be a musical? And he said, well, anything can be a musical.
I think perhaps my biggest contribution to the entire project was suggesting Elton John. And I did say, well, you'll never get him, because he'll be too busy, he'll be too expensive, and to my amazement, very quickly, Elton came on board.
I think everybody in England that was a kid looked forward to seeing Disney movies because we'd never seen anything like them.
What Elton has, and it doesn't really matter if you regard Elton as a great rock artist, which he is, but he's actually a great tunesmith. He writes wonderful melodies.
They really didn't have to sell it to me. I mean, I was in from the word go. It came at a time in my career where I thought it would be a challenge to do something different.
I wasn't really deliberately trying to break through with rock in Disney movies. That wasn't, it was just I thought this is a great composer.
I wanted to write the best a bunch of songs that had been written at that point for a Disney movie. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but that was the challenge.
He insists on having the words first. So all his tunes, including all the great songs he's written with Bernie Taupin, have all been inspired and set off by a lyric.
I see what's going on in the song, and so orally I try to put what I see visually to the lyrics and marry my feelings with what's on the paper. Nothing's greater when you actually put the melody to someone's lyric and you play them the song and they're absolutely thrilled with it.
Oh, I just can't wait to be king.
An animation film, when you first see it animated, you see drawings, pencil drawings, and then you might see a little bit of animation. And from that whole process to when you finally see it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I was going, oh my God, this is going to be huge.
Everybody look left, everybody look right.
I mean, I certainly spent a lot of my 2 or 3 years working on it, not discussing music. We were all enabled to chat about other aspects of it, the script or the way something looked or whatever. And that was nice. You felt genuinely involved. I mean, I really thought it was my film as much as anybody else's.
I mean, none of us really, when we started out, imagined what would happen, what a cult, what a phenomenon, what an enigma it would be, The Lion King. I mean, it just has a life of its own now.
Oh, I just can't wait to be king.
You know, the score was never described, or the film was never described. There was this sort of big room with storyboards on the walls, and Rob Minkoff and Roger Allers, the directors, would basically do this sort of song and dance routine. You know, they'd just like take you to the story by sort of doing all the voices, doing all the singing, doing all the tap dancing in front of these drawings. So we never quite got through the story because, you know, they'd get to a certain point and they'd look at a drawing or a scene and go, hang on, this could all be different, and then they'd sort of like in the front of you, they'd pull all that stuff off the walls and start redesigning the story, basically. So I don't think the story was ever finished until it was finished, until, you know, people got to see it. This is a long process. Slowly we all started to get to grips with the story. The whole thing was, it was going to be set in Africa. I mean, at one point it was called King of the Jungle until we figured out there aren't any lions in the jungle. I think this goes for any and every movie. It's a learning process, and you sort of go through it and you figure out what this thing is about, really. So somebody describing it to you, that's not really what happens. You know, you all discover it at the same time.
Hey, Uncle Scar, will I like the surprise?
Simba, it's to die for.
I had done a film called Power of One, which was all based basically on huge Zulu choirs and percussion, and that's it. And I thought, you know, well, let's do the same sort of thing again, big Zulu choirs and just percussion. Let's not book an orchestra, let's not do any of those things. And then I started working, and of course that concept went straight out of the window. Because you know, you can intellectualize these things or describe them as much as you want, and then you start actually writing and dealing with the material, and something completely new and different will happen. The way the animators work, the way the directors and the writers work, they do vast amounts of research, and a lot of the inspiration comes out of that. You know, my whole approach is always, I never do any research, I just rely on my imagination. I had this idea about basically working with the Zulus, you know, this warrior tribe, this very proud tribe down in South Africa. The problem is they do not have any indigenous instruments, because warrior tribes don't go schlepping grand pianos around with them because they have to go worrying, you know, and it's like foot stomps, singing, hand claps. That's really the indigenous instruments from down there. And then we started bringing in drums from Senegal and Burundi and Syria. You want to try to be as cinematic as possible. You want to try to get an emotion across through pictures and sound and music. Because when you write, you become so much part of the story. You go through that whole stuff the characters go through. I think that's what makes it special. You know, you actually invest a bit of yourself in it. When you hear an African choir, it's innocence. There's no holding back. There's never this feeling of inadequacy, you know, which makes people sing quietly. You know, you can hear every individual in the group. I'm forever trying to push the boundaries out. I'm forever trying to broaden our geographical dependence on, you know, oh, now we're here, and to make it more universal. You know, I think everybody understands tunes and rhythm. That's the thing that goes across the whole world.
Simba!
I'd never written for talking fuzzy animals. You know, I knew how to write to human characters, but, you know, these were animals. So it took me a while to sort of get over that and start doing what you actually do, which is you just treat them as human characters, or as human emotions. When you write a theme, you know, one of the things you want to do is you want to see how much life it really has, how many possibilities there are. Can it speak to you in joy? Can it speak to you in sorrow? Can it be love? Can it be hate? Can you get all these things? Can you say all these things with just a few notes? And that's the thing when you really figure out if a tune is any good or not. Does it have more than just one shallow little character? Does it have more than just one little thing to tell you? You know, can it get underneath there? Can it get under your skin? Can it get dark? Can it talk about the death of a father or something like that? I mean, the main emphasis was for me, you know, really how are we going to get in a children's movie to the idea that a father dies and make it an emotional yet not horrifying experience, but make it something that you know, children might actually want to start asking some questions about. And it's very simple. It's my point of view, because my dad dropped dead when I was 6 and I had nobody to talk to about it. So it's a very personal sort of thing. What you try to do in animation is because it's not a real world, or what you're trying to do is you're trying to advance that sense of that world, really. You're trying to create a sonic landscape that, you know, that these drawings can sit on in a way, and these characters can live within. I love movies. I love the whole thing of working in this field, because when you go to the cinema and you sit there with a group of people, that experience of everybody's emotion, you know, whoa, now we're sad, now we're happy, now we're having a laugh, now we're scared. That roller coaster ride, I mean, that's great. And if the secret, which is not much of a secret, should be known, is this is my hobby. I love doing this, you know. Anything else feels like work to me. The first thing you hear is my friend Lebo doing this great African chant. And in a way, we're buying ourselves license with this. You know you're not in Kansas anymore after that.
Lebo came in and with this vocal approach that just floored everybody. And that really set the tone for where everything was going.
Lebo M had moved to America, had left in exile South Africa, he's about 14 years old, had gone with Hans back to Africa to record Power of One, and then come, of course, back to the States. And you hear Lebo, no matter what language, and the film is in 32 different languages. You could hear this film in Hebrew, you can hear it in Swedish, you can hear it in Zulu. No matter what language you hear it in, though, it's Lebo calling out at the top as the sun rises. And Lebo became a through line for that entire African quality inside the film.
Lebo has always been literally, you know, my tour guide through this stuff. And we try things and we play around with things, and sometimes he goes, you know, well, you know, in South Africa they would do it this way, etc. And he's sort of a genius, and he's an awful lot of fun to be around.
Hans Zimmer, of course, brought his palette of sounds, and he would bring in people like Lebo M, who was parking cars at the time, you know, and he knew him and was a fan of his work.
I had promised basically Don Hahn and everybody at Disney that I'd pull this great South African singer into this project, and then of course I couldn't find him anywhere. I think it was that morning when we were doing Circle of Life, you know, suddenly, you know, I'm freaking out because I've done this whole opening for the movie, except I don't have the voice on it yet. And it's the voice which is the key element. And of course, no Lebo, I don't even know where he is, somewhere in South Africa or somewhere in Africa. And you know, the front door rings and he's standing there literally. And I'm going, okay, come in, you're singing right now. The first thing he did was he started writing lyrics. I mean, he started writing a parallel story to the story that's really going on in the movie. And since we had done a film together already, and I very quickly figured out the best way to handle him is to not control him, or just let him at it, you know, write a piece of music and let him twist it.
The first question he asked us is, what is the movie about? And Roger and I explained to him, we said it's a story about a young lion who loses his father in tragic circumstances and ultimately has to rise up to his responsibility as king. And he got very thoughtful, and he walked away, and he started jotting notes on a piece of paper, and then he came back and he said, okay, I'm ready, and it was all in African. Hans played the musical track, and Lebo and his two friends started this chant, the Ngwenyama, Ngwenambabala, and it was just magic. It was unbelievable. And then later we said, well, what does it mean? And when he explained the English translation, he had found the heart of the movie.
There's only so much you can put in a 90-minute movie, and we had all this other material that we thought, oh, there's a terrific soundtrack album to be had. And Chris Montan, our music supervisor, pulled in all that material into Rhythm of the Pride Lands.
It just really touched people's souls in some way that I'm happy about.
Rhythm of the Pride Lands grew out of us riding around in our cars listening to all the inspirational music that we put together on cassette tapes. And being Americans as we are, we weren't that familiar with it. So as we started to collect it, we thought, oh, this is really interesting. And Roger Allers would bring in a tape and say, oh, you got to listen to this.
There was so much energy, so much positive energy that was still in the room, it's still in them from the project that they went on and did that other album, Rhythm of the Pride Lands. They were just still going with all that energy. And it was in that session that Mark wrote, He Lives in You.
It's really Lebo's record, though. He's all over it. He came up with such beautiful music.
After we did The Circle of Life, they were convinced that that's the direction they feel musically the film should go. So I was called back in to work on the film.
I mean, the way his role works is I write something and I say, Lebo, does this sound African? He goes, yeah, sure. And he makes up some some story about, you know, that some tribe somewhere in Africa probably writes just like this. So if I play him bits of Mozart, he still says, no, 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 we can make this work, which is pretty much how we always work.
I've really been blessed to come across some of the greatest musicians alive, and I think Hans is one of them. I mean, the man can write an orchestra piece within a matter of hours, and it takes a genius to do that, you know.
Lebo's thing is about managing large groups of singers, and that's where he comes from, and it's getting them excited and getting them to sing as a unit so that they really have a singular impact.
If you've got singers in a room with him, he just takes over. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Ready, here we go. And you listen to it, and it's magic.
There's so much trouble in their homes, in their neighborhoods. You know, people really, you know, were killing each other, and singing was such a relief for them. For the first time, I thought we actually added something to somebody's life a bit. You know, they could just forget, they could sing.
I was wrong all along. All that I needed was to have needed Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata ain't no passing craze. It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's a problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata, Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Yeah. Hakuna Matata.
I mean, if you're going to win an award, the one to win, and I'm thrilled to have won a Tony because and that was my first attempt really at that with Aida. But to win the Oscar, which happened before that, was quite amazing. We had 3 songs nominated out of the 5. We had Can You Feel the Love Tonight, Circle of Life, and Hakuna Matata. And when our names were announced, and you were holding that very, very heavy statuette, I couldn't really believe it. I mean, as a kid, I never dreamt of having an Oscar. You know, why would I? I mean, I was just a musician. Why would I? Never dreamt I'd be writing songs for movies. So it was. I mean, that Oscar never left my side for a week, and it was one of the happiest professional moments of my career.
Nobody, I think, was ever 100% adamant about this is right, this is the way we do it, because it was very much a team effort.
Any group of creative people have well-developed egos, you know, because that's part of the creative process. And so, you know, it makes for a lot of sparks. And ultimately, you hope that those sparks ignite a fire that people are interested to watch.
You know, once you're hooked, you're really hooked. You know, you want this to be good. You know that you're following in a line of people having done fantastic work.